Hey there, history enthusiasts and inquisitive souls. Welcome to an intriguing episode where we delve into the possible aftermath of a catastrophic event, a nuclear war. This is no light topic, folks. The very thought of a nuclear conflict sends chills down our spines, and for good reason. Just cast your minds back to the mid-20th century, when the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were obliterated in the blink of an eye. The devastation was unimaginable, the loss of life staggering. And those were just two bombs. Now, imagine a world where hundreds, if not thousands, of these destructive forces are unleashed. It's a grim picture, isn't it? But it's a reality we must confront, to understand the gravity of the choices we make as a global community. So, brace yourself as we embark on this unnerving journey into the possible consequences of a nuclear war. Imagine for a moment the immediate aftermath of a nuclear explosion. The scene is beyond devastating. The detonation of a nuclear bomb is anything but a quiet affair. A deafening roar fills the air, followed by a shockwave that speeds outward faster than the speed of sound, obliterating everything in its path. Buildings, bridges, roads, structures that took years, decades, even centuries to build, are reduced to rubble in an instant. But the shockwave is just the beginning. Following closely behind is an intense burst of heat. This heat is so extreme it can ignite fires miles away from the blast's epicenter, creating a sea of flames that engulfs whole cities. Imagine, if you will, the sun's fiery touch reaching down to the Earth's surface, turning everything into an inferno. And then, there's the radiation. In the first few minutes after the explosion, a wave of initial radiation sweeps across the landscape. This isn't the kind of radiation you might get from a routine X-ray or a long-haul flight. This is radiation intense enough to cause immediate sickness or death to those exposed. The human cost of such an event is unimaginable. The death toll would rise into the hundreds of thousands, even millions depending on the size of the city and the power of the bomb. Lives would be snuffed out in an instant, with survivors facing a world irrevocably changed. The infrastructure that supports our daily lives would be decimated. Power plants, water treatment facilities, hospitals, schools, all would be reduced to rubble. Communication networks would be down, leaving survivors in a state of isolation. The very fabric of society, the things we often take for granted, would be torn apart. The immediate effects are harrowing, but unfortunately, the disaster doesn't end here. The fallout from a nuclear explosion has long-term consequences that extend far beyond the initial blast. But that, my friends, is a story for another scene. The environmental repercussions of a nuclear war are far-reaching and long-lasting. They extend beyond the immediate devastation of cities and human lives, seeping into the very fabric of our planet. Consider nuclear fallout, the deadly cocktail of radioactive particles that rain down from the sky following a nuclear explosion. These particles, invisible yet lethal, contaminate the air, soil, and water. They do not discriminate, impacting every corner of our world. The fallout can last for years, even decades, making the affected areas uninhabitable and causing diseases like cancer in both humans and animals. But the fallout is just the beginning. A nuclear war could trigger what scientists call a nuclear winter. This is a severe and prolonged global climatic cooling effect that occurs when smoke and soot from the burning cities and forests rise high into the stratosphere. This dark, sooty cloud would block out the sun's rays, drastically reducing temperatures on Earth. This sudden drop in temperature would disrupt the global climate and could lead to widespread crop failure and famine. The impact on wildlife and vegetation is equally catastrophic. Radioactive particles can infiltrate the food chain, affecting every organism from the smallest insect to the largest mammal. Entire ecosystems could collapse. Many species would face extinction, and biodiversity, the very crux of life on Earth, would be severely threatened. And let's not forget the oceans, the lifeblood of our planet. A nuclear war would cause unprecedented damage to marine life, with radioactive particles contaminating our seas and oceans, disrupting the delicate balance of marine ecosystems. The long-term effects on the planet's climate are still a matter of scientific study, but the consensus is clear: a nuclear war would trigger catastrophic environmental changes. Changes that could take hundreds, if not thousands of years to reverse. The planet we call home would be left scarred and unrecognizable. A nuclear war is not just a human catastrophe, it's an ecological disaster, and it's a disaster we have the power to prevent. Surviving the initial explosion is just the beginning of a long and grueling battle for those left behind. The fallout from a nuclear explosion is not limited to the immediate destruction. In fact, the aftermath can be even more devastating and far-reaching. One of the most significant impacts on human survival would be radiation sickness. The symptoms of radiation sickness range from nausea and vomiting to severe damage to the internal organs, ultimately leading to a slow and painful death. Without the proper medical facilities and personnel to treat this condition, the number of fatalities would rise exponentially. As if the physical effects of radiation weren't enough, survivors would also grapple with food scarcity. The nuclear fallout would contaminate the soil, making it impossible for plants to grow and for animals to find food. This would result in a drastic drop in food supplies, making survival a daily struggle. With the lack of food, malnutrition and starvation would become widespread, leading to a further decline in the health of the survivors. And let's not forget the psychological trauma. The survivors would be haunted by the memories of the explosion, the loss of loved ones, and the destruction of their homes and communities. The constant fear and anxiety, coupled with the uncertainty of the future, would take a severe toll on their mental health, making recovery even more difficult. Lastly, the lack of medical facilities would exacerbate all these issues. Without access to healthcare, survivors would not receive the necessary treatment for their physical and psychological wounds. The lack of medication and basic healthcare services would make survival even more challenging. In essence, the struggle for survival in a post-nuclear world would not just be about enduring the physical effects of the explosion, it would also involve battling the psychological trauma, the scarcity of resources, and the lack of medical care. All of these factors combined would make surviving in a post-nuclear world a stark reality. The struggle for survival in a post-nuclear world would be a stark reality. In the wake of such a catastrophe, society as we know it would cease to exist. The fallout of a nuclear war would extend far beyond the physical destruction and loss of human life. Let's delve into the societal breakdown that would likely occur in the aftermath. Governments, the entities that uphold law and order, would crumble under the weight of such devastation. The very foundations of our political systems, built over centuries, would be swept away in the nuclear aftermath. In place of structured governance, we would likely see chaos and confusion. The remaining populace struggling for survival would find it difficult to maintain any semblance of order. This lack of regulation and control could, in turn, lead to anarchy and lawlessness. With no effective law enforcement and judicial systems, crime could run rampant. People might resort to desperate measures to survive, including theft, violence, and other forms of aggression. A survival of the fittest scenario could unfold, where the strong prey on the weak. And what about our economic systems? The financial markets that drive our global economy would effectively be obliterated. With no stable currency or trade, we could revert to barter systems, exchanging goods and services for survival rather than profit. The concept of wealth and prosperity would drastically change, with basic necessities becoming the most valuable commodities. Societal structures and norms that we take for granted would also collapse. Education, healthcare, transportation, communication, the pillars of modern society, would be decimated. The emphasis would shift from advancement and progress to mere survival. The cultural and intellectual richness that defines us as a civilization would be at risk as well. Libraries, museums, universities, repositories of human knowledge and achievement could be reduced to rubble. Our collective memory could be wiped out, leaving future generations with a fragmented understanding of their past. In essence, a nuclear war could take us back to the Dark Ages. It's a grim picture, isn't it? But it underscores the importance of preventing such a catastrophe. Let's turn our attention to that in the next segment. The consequences of a nuclear war are grim and sobering, but it's not too late to change course. Indeed, the power to prevent such a catastrophic event lies within our grasp. It's all about understanding the importance of nuclear disarmament, peacekeeping, and diplomatic negotiations. Think about it, nuclear weapons don't create peace. They create a tense stalemate. A balance of terror, if you will, where one misstep could lead to unimaginable destruction. That's why disarmament is key. By reducing the number of these weapons, we reduce the chance of them being used. But disarmament alone is not enough. We also need peacekeeping efforts and diplomatic negotiations to resolve conflicts without resorting to violence. It's about fostering understanding, building trust, and promoting cooperation among nations. So, let's not shy away from these difficult conversations. Let's embrace them. For they are our best hope for a peaceful and secure future. Remember, the future is in our hands. We have the power to prevent such a grim reality. We hope this exploration into the potential consequences of a nuclear war has been enlightening. As we conclude this journey into the unimaginable, we invite you to ponder and share your reflections. What are the preventative measures you think should be taken? How can we collectively ensure a future free from such devastation? Hit that like button if you found this video informative, subscribe for more thought-provoking content, and don't forget to join the conversation in the comments below. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning.